Hey everyone, Joshua Kirk here with you once again, and now it's time for episode 162 of Album of the Day, in which, today I'm gonna review the latest album from a singer-songwriter based out of Alabama who I guess now currently lives in Nashville and has been one of Americana music's most critically acclaimed songwriters, in the past few years or so of his career. Of course, he started out in his career, in the, Georgia rock band Drive-By Truckers, and as you can see, I'm wearing that a Drive-By Truckers shirt in this video, which makes sense, because this guy used to be in the Drive-By Truckers, before eventually going off to do his own solo stuff, and forming his own band in 2008. So, of course, I'm talking about the singer-songwriter known as Jason Isbell and his backing band, the 400 Unit. 100 Unit. Here to review Jason Isbell's most recent record and his third, as Jason Isbell and the 400 Unit. And the album is called The Nashville Sound. You may remember I reviewed Jason Isbell before, back in 2016, with the album Something More Than Free, his last record, which was a great album, by the way. His breakout record, released before that, Southeastern, definitely was a huge turning point for Isbell in terms of his songwriting skills and whatnot, and the emotional impact that he really brought with those songs. And, he's, pretty much gotten a little more exposure lately. He's got a few Grammys for his last record, and also, Southeastern won, the Americana Music Award, and it got, huge critical acclaim. And this one's already definitely getting really good reviews, and it's made it onto a few best lists, including Rolling Stone's Best of the Year so far list. Anyway, this is what the case looks like. There's 10 songs on the record. It's over 40 minutes long, and it's produced by one of my favorite modern producers out of Nashville right now, Dave Cobb, who has worked with Isbell on his last two records and stuff, but has also worked with the likes of Chris Stapleton, Sturgill Simpson, and also some not-so-country artists lately, like Lake Street Dive and All Them Witches, who, All Them Witches put out an amazing new record this year, Sleeping Through the War. I'm going to have to review that sometime. And it's recorded at RCA's Nashville Sound Studio. There's some Polaroid photos in here, as well as those are the liner notes in there of all the band members. Yeah, some really nice Polaroids going on in here. Footage from the studio and stuff. And it's got a little booklet, picture of the band there, and which the band consists of Chad Gamble on drums, Jimbo Hart on bass, Derry DeBorja on keys, Sadler Vaden on guitars, and his wife, Amanda Shires, who plays fiddle and sings backup vocals. And there are lyrics in there. And the thank yous and stuff. And it's released, self-released on, Jason Isbell's own label, Southeastern Records. Its name coming from that, the Southeastern record, as well as, 30 Tigers. It's his management. That's where his management comes from. Which, I do remember, I did see Jason Isbell in the 400 Unit in 2013 at Baltimore soundstage during the Southeastern tour, and like Tracy Thomas, who's like his manager, like kind of hooked me up for that, and I think I got to like meet her before the show or something. But yeah, she was really nice. But yeah, she was really nice, and yeah, this is the packaging for the Nashville Sound, the new Jason Isbell album. Now, like it got of course, like I. To sort of catch you up a little bit on like Jason Isbell, I definitely am a pretty big fan of the work that he's done, whether it's like with Drive-By Truckers or like some of his solo stuff, his stuff with the 400 unit. In fact, he's never really put out much that I didn't like. His last two records were definitely like a couple of his best to date. Southeastern was very dramatic and dark and very powerful record, something more than free, while not necessarily as, not necessarily as dramatic as that record, still definitely had plenty of impact, and, some great songwriting on that too, and the production on that record sounded really nice too. Dave Cobb did a good job. This new record, while it isn't necessarily anything altogether new for Isbell, it definitely does see him, at his most direct, and I think it is most accessible yet. So for anyone who may have thought maybe his last few records were a little hard to get into, this one, I think will be a little easier for you guys to really, get into, because but still, nonetheless, it's still very powerful, and still, Jason Isbell proves that he's still relevant as one of Americana's greatest songwriters at the moment. So, like, the opening track on this album is Last of My Kind, which, sort of sees him it's kind of a vignette kind of dealing with, like, his youth pretty much, and talking about how he can't really seem to be happy in the city at night, and and stuff like that, and and he seems to be kind of living in kind of a rundown sort of environment pretty much, and he tried to make something out of his life, like he tried to go to college, but his drinking habits and the things that he said that were either funny or wrong kind of prevented him from really trying to, move forward and try to, make some sort of, purpose out of his life. He's just left alone in a bad part of town. And he really does show off his poeticism really well on lines like, Mama says God won't give you too much to bear. That might be true in Arkansas, but I'm a long way from there. That whole world's an old and faded picture in my mind. And he's sort of wondering, am I the last of my kind? Sort of leading him to that question as like the hook of the song. And it has a really beautiful instrumental to back it up. Dave Cobb did a good job sort of, with producing the album, and the 400 unit definitely did come through with really nice, outro for the end of the song. Before it eventually goes into a much more energetic track with the song Cumberland Gap, which is definitely one of my favorite songs in the record, It's so catchy and anthemic, probably the hookiest song on the entire LP. So it kind of makes sense that it was one of the teaser tracks released for the record, although technically not really the lead single, And, this lyric, and, the lyrics on this song, he's sort of making reflections kind of, about his father and how he was in the mines all day, and, and he knows that he wanted, like, more than mouths to feed and, like, bills to pay and stuff, But then he definitely does, he definitely does bring up, some very kind of cathartic lines like, I ain't cut out for war unless I know what I'm fighting for. And I can't remember the last time I heard someone say in 2017, there ain't much money in the old time mandolin. Uh, when, and also, like, definitely a good, and definitely a great hook on the song. And also, I do really like, the line, if you don't sit facing the window, you can be in any town. The song Tupelo, oh, sorry. And then the next song, Tupelo, which is kind of, he's sort of reflecting on, like, I'm not sure if you know this, but, back in his days with Drive-By Truckers, he did write some really good songs, but apparently as a person, he wasn't necessarily that great of a person because he was, like, drinking a lot and doing drugs and stuff, but, like, now he's okay, but, back then, he sort of was kind of a hard partying fool. So it's kind of a song where he's kind of looking back on, kind of how wasted he was and, kind of, things, but he's in this moment where he feels like, tonight it feels just fine. And Linky brings up lyrics about, like, sitting in his car, drinking a plastic cup of wine and stuff, and sort of, he kind of desperately wants to kind of go back to this, place where I think, this could be kind of a, reflection of his past and how he kind of met Amanda Shires and stuff, like, and talk about when I get out of this hole, I'm going to Tupelo, and there's a girl down there that will treat me fair. And also, like, some other very poetic curveballs that I love on here, like, I should have figured out which drawer to put the good knives in. The wars between the weekends tore Playhouse down. But he does mention how there isn't anyone from his hometown that'll follow me there, because he sort of talks about how everybody just kind of gave up on him at the time, And it does have a, really beautiful instrumental, like, the acoustic and electric guitars, the fiddle melody is definitely, very memorable for sure. And, and also it has a gorgeous, like, slide guitar solo in the middle as well. But then, he does kind of go on kind of a political angle a little bit with the song White Man's World, which, White Man's World, that kind of stands for, like, kind of, this community of, kind of this stereotypical community of, kind of, which kind of stands for kind of this community of people that, unfortunately, like, overwhelmingly, like, voted for Trump and stuff. But I like how it's not explicitly, like, an anti-Trump song. It definitely, is kind of a song sort of, looking at that kind of world in, kind of a more subtle way, pretty much. Much. And, it definitely does, and I'm sure it feels very cathartic for him to, spit words out of his mouth like, want to take a shot of cocaine and burn it down. Mama wants to change that Nashville sound, but they're never going to let her. But then also sort of throwing in sort of, reflections of like, how, they have like a new baby and stuff, and, he thought this world could be hers one day, but, her mama knew better. But then it definitely does have a sense of poignancy and optimism to it that I like, with especially the chorus, like when he says things like, there's no such thing as someone else's war. Your creature comforts aren't the only things we're fighting for. You're still breathing. It's not too late. We're all carrying one great burden, sharing one fate. And also I do really like the kind of visceral instrumental, which at the same time also does see him rocking out very subtly, for sure. Really like a nice rhythm section on this track. And also I do like the fiddle and guitar solos that kind of respond to one another, which I think, sounds really nice. A lot of chemistry there. For anyone who really loved the kind of dark, sort of, emotional sound of Southeastern, I think you're gonna like the song "If We Were Vampires." One of my favorite tracks on the record. Beautiful song. Like, the acoustic guitar melody on that song is just beautifully haunting. And, and its lyrics, like, it's kind of like a deconstructed love song, pretty much. And I love the title, by the way, If We Were Vampires. This song, its lyrics is kind of, it's definitely got some, pretty emotional lyrics, sort of. The thing that's bringing him down, it's not necessarily, like you mentioned, is all these things about her, like, like your hands searching slow in the dark, or your nails leaving love's watermark, the fragile heart you protected for so long. But rather it's like knowing that this can't go on forever, and likely one of them would have to, spend some days alone. Maybe they'll get 40 years together, but one day they'll be gone and stuff, gone. But the vampires thing definitely does make sense when he, mentions the line, that's the title in the line, "If we were vampires and death was a joke," and started talking about how they would laugh at all the lovers and their plans and whatnot. And also, musically, the song just sounds really beautiful, and really does show some interesting production elements, like the kind of echoey backup vocals, the moaning strings, and there's like a touch of synthesizer on the song too that I'm hearing that sounds really nice on there as well. Probably my favorite song on the record, though, would have to be, probably the most ambitious song on the record, the song "Anxiety," a 7-minute epic, but still, boy, does it manage to stay engaging in that, in that long runtime that it has. I definitely do really relate to the lyrics of this song because, anxiety is definitely one thing that I tend to deal with as well. It's, the character in this song seems to be sort of, in this state of anxiety where he can't enjoy anything and stuff. And, it seems like, and just when it seems like everything's, the pieces are put back together and his life seems perfect, he kind of realizes that, that there is definitely going to be, a little kind of, that he's going to feel himself fall a little bit sometimes as well. There are just some extremely powerful lyrics on this song, like the line, "A crowded room is a burning battlefield," or "My heart beats hard, a hammer striking steel," "I'm light as a prayer until I feel myself fall," and also it's definitely very kind of, it's also at the same time kind of a triumph and very cathartic when you get to the chorus and stuff, and it's kind of a storytelling song. It's kind of a bit of has a really interesting musical structure to it. For example, the mellotron keys don't come in till the bridge, but definitely do sound really nice on there. And it does have a really killer and explosive, guitar intro and outro too. Pretty much one of his first songs. And, pretty much one of his most explosive moments since, anything he may have done with the Drive-By Truckers. The song Molotov has kind of an exotic Latin groove going on that I do really like. And, its lyrics seem to be kind of about, his relationship with Amanda Shires a little bit. Sort of talking about how, it's sort of about, kind of, he's sort of wondering if, she misses the girl that she used to be and, and all this stuff, and things and wondering if she misses things like her little black Mercedes and stuff, and and like and, like the narrator sort of telling him like when you said we had the same when you said we had the same three wishes, I hope that you weren't being facetious. I hope that you still see fire inside of me. So like it's interesting how it's kind of the way it's kind of assessing a relationship, and the sense of wondering like if there's anything that we miss, or if there's some things we have to leave behind or something. The song Chaos and Cloves, definitely the song Chaos and Cloves, one of the quieter songs in the record, but definitely still a very interesting track for sure. And this is one song where I think Dave Cobb's production definitely, really does complement it really nicely. Like, sort of, Jason's vocals are kind of sound kind of Beatlesy because they're like double tracked and stuff. The fingerpick guitars and it's vocals and even its lyrics kind of remind me a little bit of like an Elliott Smith song a little bit. Its lyrics are like it definitely does have some pretty interesting lyrics on here, and has a pretty powerful line for the chorus. You're in a fight to the death, my friend. And saying things like sort of describing a black metal T-shirt as someone's shield, and the waves as a grand battlefield as well. And stuff like that, and then out of the blue, I hear him say stuff like, in my sleep I build machines, but nobody ever wants to hear about my dreams. Last night I saw a burning Ferris wheel. The meaning's anybody's guess. Oh yes. Whoa. And also it does have some pretty cool backwards piano, at the end. At the end. And following that is Hope the High Road, which is pretty much like kind of the lead single for the album. Even though I wouldn't necessarily say it's the album's strongest track in my opinion, I don't necessarily connect to the lyrics on the first verse, but once the chorus comes in, it picks up a little bit, and I definitely do, think the lyrics on the second verse are like, much better pretty much, sort of, talking about how he's tired of singing the white man's blues, and, how, if you're looking for some bad news, go find it somewhere else, and sort of, but then also, definitely throwing in some very agreeable sort of lines about how, last year was not necessarily a great year for pretty much everyone we know, pretty much. And also I do really like the message in the chorus, like very poignant and optimistic. Like, wherever you are, I hope the high road leaves you home again. Even though, the bridge does have some eye roller lines in it, about, dumping buckets overboard and stuff. But, still, I do like kind of the anthemic sort of poignancy of the song still, with, the vibe of the instrumental and stuff. If I were in charge of choosing a single, I would probably choose Cumberland Gap over this one for the single. And it does close out with yet another one of my favorite songs in the record, Something to Love, which has kind of this, sort of relaxed backyard bluegrass kind of, vibe to it, with, the fiddle and, the fiddle and, it's driven by acoustic guitars, and it's got, the drums played with brushes and stuff, stuff like that. And, but definitely one of my favorite songs because, I love the message on the song. It's probably one of the most positive and optimistic songs Isbell has ever written, but, you kind of need to find a little balance, because the rest of the record is pretty dark, but this song seems like kind of a happy ending to kind of this story full of conflict, pretty much. I can tell that this song is like dedicated to, like, Jason and Amanda have a new daughter named Mercy Rose Isbell, and this song is kind of like, dedicated to her, and he's kind of reflecting on very fond memories that he's had of his family, sort of, who taught him everything that he knows about, like, music and stuff, and how they played music on the porch on Sunday nights, and and also learning to get a little more chill, even if some of the situations are kind of imperfect, like in the line where he talks about, like, lying in a blanket in the yard, and how even though it's cold and the ground is hard, it'll be okay and stuff, and he doesn't, but at the same time, he doesn't quite recognize the world that she would call home, but, just sort of telling her that, but sort of hoping the best for her, and, sort of telling her just whatever makes you happy, and just, do it till you're gone and stuff. So, I definitely, do relate to the message a lot, because it definitely is important that, if you're a parent, to really kind of, sort of give your kids some purposeful advice, and Jason did just that with this song. But yeah, I really like this record. While it isn't necessarily better than Something More Than Free, heck, it's even not better than Southeastern, I still definitely do think that this album is the much needed step forward for him, and for his band, the 400 Unit, as well. Probably his best record that he's done, with the 400 Unit. Because I know he's put out a couple other albums with them that were great. I would tell you that, but, I feel like this is definitely the turning point for this second act that he has. So I'm going to give the Nashville Sound an 8 out of 10. And that's my review for this record. And I'll see you for episode 163.